Hi, this is Steve for True Hollywood Talk, where we're Rick Bieber, and he runs a film and production house, and we're over here at the Method Fest. I want to welcome Rick to TrueHollywoodTalk.com. How you doing, Rick?
I'm well, Steve. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Tell us about your company. What you been doing?
Well, I'm a film producer traditionally, but much more recently have been writing and directing. The first movie that I ever produced was Flatliners. With the group, Julia and Kevin and Kiefer, and then Made in America and Radio Flyer, a number of films. Michael Douglas and I had a company together for many years called Stonebridge Entertainment. But these last few years, I've enjoyed working in the independent arena. And the reason that I'm here is that I wrote and directed a film called Crazy, which stars Waylon, Payne, and Larter.
What's crazy about it? Is that the Alley from Heroes?
Yes, that's the same.
We're big Heroes fans, my son and I, but she's always got that great multiple personality. Now, obviously, Flatliners, you've worked on some really big budget films with you and Michael Douglas. What is the attraction for you to work in the smaller films? Is it control? Those are huge films. What made you make that transition, Rick?
Well, part of it was just a growing interest on my part to write and direct. And I felt that I could control that environment a bit more than I could the sort of conventional studio arena. And I'm also attracted to films that are either based upon or inspired by true stories. I feel like they resonate more, when they are dramatic unto themselves. And films that are really about characters and relationships and drama. And those are films that are becoming progressively more difficult to do on a bigger budgeted, wider distribution basis.
Do you think that's because we have large corporations now that are dominant, a few of them? It seemed in the 70s, movies like Jaws were made, but they're not being made today. We're spending $25-30 million just marketing pictures. When did the Eureka bell go off for you to say, I want to write, I want to produce something that, like you said, touches human emotion? What was the moment that you said, you were working on big projects? That's a big transition.
Yeah, this films like those in the 70s just aren't being made anymore. I mean, I don't think you can make Midnight Cowboy today, and have it released by a major studio. I think that the independent marketplace has really become such an amazing arena, and a very legitimate arena these last several years. I mean, look at the Academy Awards over the last few years. I mean, the smaller films, the character-driven films, films that have been financed and developed outside of the system have, attracted tremendous audience support. So, for me, it's Crazy was a joyous experience. I'm about to start another film in a few weeks called The Fifth Quarter, which I also wrote and will direct, which has also been privately funded. And it's an opportunity that I don't think I'd have with the larger companies.
What's Crazy about? Give us the basic premise, and is this the premiere here at Method Fest?
It's certainly the West Coast festival premiere. We did have an industry screening at the Grauman's Hollywood Theater a couple of months ago. But Crazy is inspired by the life of a guitar player named Hank Garland, who emerged from the Nashville scene in the 50s and 60s. He was a genius player, a prodigy, who moved effortlessly from country to rock to jazz. But he was a very rebellious character. Took on what was then considered the Nashville Mob, the guys that controlled the music union and the clubs and the record labels. He tried to integrate Nashville by bringing African-American jazz musicians into town from New York and Chicago. And then he also had the misfortune, I guess, of marrying this very, very beautiful but somewhat tempestuous woman who he met while he was on the road. And their relationship was unstable, to say the least. And I think those two forces, his personal life and this adversarial relationship he had with the Nashville culture, led to a very tragic and early demise of his playing career when he was 31 years old in 1961. But by then, he had played on almost every hit record recorded by Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and Patsy Cline and Roy Orbison. I mean, he was just a phenomenon.
Let me ask you something. When you're writing something, this obviously is a very large character. Good writing is not easy. How do you know, one, what you're writing is good, and two, when you write, are you thinking of an actor to play it, or you're just busy writing a good story, and then you'll figure out how to cast it later, because you've obviously worked with some very big names in the business?
Yeah. Well, one, I never know whether the writing is good. You know, the first time I really have a sense of how well it may or may not work is during the auditions. You know, until the auditions, you live with the script in your mind's eye only. But when you finally hear actors reading the scenes and either having them mirror the interpretation that was in your mind when you first wrote them, or bringing something totally unexpected, it's really the first opportunity to either get excited or, you know, manically depressed. In this case, it worked out pretty well. No, I didn't have an actor in mind at all. You know, I had researched the characters extensively. Because the story is one that took place 40 years ago, there's not a lot of material. A lot of it was sort of oral history, people that I had met with and spent a great deal of time with. The Garland family. Hank actually was still alive. He passed away 2 weeks before we started shooting the film. Yeah, and he and his brother Billy and Billy's wife Amy were tremendous sources for me. So really what I was just trying to do was convey the reality of that time and place.
What was the response when you had that screening?
Well, knock on sofa. It's been great. You know, it's been great. It's a big music movie. Tons of music that we recorded, original songs that we re-recorded. Larry Klein, who is this icon, producer, composer. Larry's produced everyone from Joni Mitchell to Madeleine Perot, and in fact, this past year, won the Grammy for the first time as Best Album for a Jazz Album, producing Herbie Hancock. And Larry produced all the music in the movie, and the music's really brilliant. So, you know, that's a great cornerstone of the film, and it's a very dramatic story. You know, putting aside the fact that it's true, it's just thoroughly dramatic unto itself. And how do
you develop your own style as a writer and director? You know, there's Scorsese's, there's the Sidney Pollacks, there's the Clint Eastwood. What is Rick's style? Is it, you know, if you had to, you know, Clint Eastwood does everything on one take. Yeah. What type of director are you, and are you an easy guy to work with? Maybe you don't want to answer that.
Yeah. You know,
you have a certain intensity about you. Just sitting here, there's a certain power radiating from you, and we're just wondering, you know, how does it work with you when you're on the set?
Well, here's the thing. I think my years producing was a great experience for me, and I learned a lot about preparation and how important it is to be thoroughly prepared. By the time I walk on a set, in my mind, I've made this movie. Also, working in the independent arena, where the budget and schedules are, you know, tremendously stringent. I mean, this was an incredibly ambitious shoot. You know, it's a period Nashville movie with tons of performed and recorded music that we shot in Los Angeles in 23 days.